Hello! So you just clicked on an hour and 20-minute long video about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and so I figure I should give you a little preface, let you know what you're in for. My name is Ben Prytherch. I am an instructor in the statistics department at Colorado State University. This is a video of a talk that I gave in November 2021 at a local movie theater / arts mecca called The Lyric. It was hosted by a local science outreach group called Science on Tap, and it's on the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a video that is aimed at a general audience, not necessarily an academic audience. There are academics in attendance there, but I try not to make it sound too academic. I try to keep it entertaining. I try not to get too technical, although it's going to be more technical than other videos you would find on this topic. Not as technical as like reading a paper on it. As far as what I cover in the talk, I start off just defining what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. I talk about the original study by Justin Kruger and David Dunning in a paper called Unskilled and Unaware of It. I go over what they did in their experiment, what the results were, how they were interpreted. I go over a bunch of graphs you can find on the internet that purport to represent the Dunning-Kruger effect, but that actually mischaracterize it pretty severely. And I do a fun little historical investigation tracking down the origin of those graphs. I then switch gears and talk about some scientific criticisms of the Dunning-Kruger effect. There are a few of them, including some people who say that it's not even really a thing in the first place. I talk about some responses to those criticisms, some defenses of the scientific status of the Dunning-Kruger effect. I give some of my own big picture thoughts. And then there's 20 minutes or so of audience Q&A at the end. So if you have maybe heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect but don't know a whole lot about it, I think you'll learn a lot from watching this video. If you are a Dunning-Kruger effect enthusiast and you, go around diagnosing it in other people, you might end up revising some of your beliefs after watching this. If you have heard or you believe that the Dunning-Kruger effect has been debunked, I hope to convince you that things are more complicated than that. For my own part, I am not an expert on this. I'm not a psychologist. I've not done any original research. I have read a lot about it, and I think I cover most of the major topics and claims and arguments that get made in the sort of scientific controversy surrounding it. I hope that I faithfully represent people's positions. I probably got some stuff wrong. I do reference a lot of papers, studies, blog posts, interviews, and every time I reference one of those in the video, you will see a little number pop up on the screen with a reference that you can go find in the video description. It'll have a link to the original source material. You can follow it. You can read all the details if you'd like. There are also links in the description, video timestamp links that take you straight to particular parts of the video, particular topics if you want to go straight to something. I think that's about it for my preface. I'm going to go to the video now just to let you know where it starts. We're in the theater. The audience has been in there for 5 or 10 minutes, and they just answered a bunch of multiple choice questions about the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that will come up later on in the talk. And okay, I hope you enjoy it. So they'll be on the YouTube. Are we good, Jason? All right, cool. Okay, I think. Yes. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. This is our first special event at the Lyric, so this is really exciting. I really want to thank the Lyric, of course, for having us. They've been wonderful in getting us set up and here. I also really want to thank Ben. He has been fantastic in putting this together. He is a second-time Science on Tap speaker, with a new topic every time, of course. And he is here to talk to us about all the things we think we know.
About the things we think we know about what we think we know about what other people know.
That's exactly what it is.
It's something like that. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Enjoy.
Oh, thank you, Siri. Yeah, thanks. This is man. It's so great to see so many people here, and thank you so much to Science on Tap and to the Lyric for putting this together. I've been getting kind of obsessed with the Dunning-Kruger effect for a little bit, and I kept collecting new things and like spending late nights on the internet looking at stuff and like doing my research as people do on the internet, and I decided I'd put something together. So I am in the stats department at Colorado State. This isn't a statistics talk. There's going to be some stat stuff in it, because of course, but it's not going to be I'm going to try to keep it from being a full-on stats-ish talk. Mark noted that we found out my first mistake, which is right here. Let's see. Can I? Let's see. Oh no! Is my pen? My pen wants to be on a different screen. Let's see. Oh. All right. Nah, I don't think it's gonna happen. All right, that's fine. I'm not gonna write on this. Okay. Does the arrow do something? Okay, the arrow did something. Yay. Okay. Cool. So I guess this is the thing. Y'all filled out this survey at the top, asking about what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, and so here we go. I just decided to look up the usual sources, like Wikipedia. First one. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a hypothetical cognitive bias stating that people with low ability at a task overestimate their own ability, and that people with high ability at a task underestimate their own ability. That's according to Wikipedia. I like Wikipedia for at least the stuff I'm into. Like if I'm ever looking up a stats thing, like usually there's not trolls screwing things up on Wikipedia. Let's see, Psychology Today. So Psychology Today, this is like a psychological phenomenon. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people wrongly overestimate their knowledge or ability in a specific area. This tends to occur because a lack of self-awareness prevents them from accurately assessing their own skills. So Psychology Today has like an explanation of why this happens as well. I apologize, the bottom of this is getting cut off on the screen, but I will read things to you as we go. Dictionary.com had something on their Twitter page. The Dunning-Kruger effect explains why incompetent people are unable to see that they're incompetent, and we can tell which one is incompetent because he has a tiny little mouse brain and a smile on his face. And the person with a giant brain that takes up too much space in the head is sad for many reasons, including the brain's too big. Let's see, and then we'll just go to Urban Dictionary, because why not? Dunning-Kruger effect, when somebody is bad, stupid, ignorant in a field and thinks that they are good, great, guru, expert. This normally happens due to people not having enough knowledge in that field to even know that they are bad at this field. It's pretty good from Urban Dictionary there. Okay, so the beginning of this, I'm going to go kind of slow at the beginning. There's going to be a lot of text. I won't read all of it, but I really want to nail down exactly what the Dunning-Kruger effect at least was initially when it came out. So this is a paper in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 1999. Dunning and Kruger were the authors. And so there's the title, Unskilled and Unaware of It. How difficulties in recognizing one's own incompetence lead to inflated self-assessments. Let's see the abstract. People tend to hold overly favorable views of their abilities in many social and intellectual domains. The authors suggest that this overestimation occurs in part because people who are unskilled in these domains suffer a dual burden. Not only do these people reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the metacognitive ability to realize it. Across 4 studies, the authors found that participants scoring in the bottom quartile on tests of humor, grammar, and logic, so there's a couple of your answers right there, grossly overestimated their test performance and ability. Although their test scores put them in the 12th percentile, they estimated themselves to be in the 62nd percentile. There we go. So the paper makes some specific predictions. So prediction 1, incompetent individuals compared with their more competent peers will dramatically overestimate their ability and performance relative to objective criteria. Prediction 2, incompetent individuals will suffer from deficient metacognitive skills in that they will be less able than their more competent peers to recognize competence when they see it, be it their own or anyone else's. So this term metacognitive comes up a lot in this paper. So it's like your ability to be aware of your own cognition. At least that's my understanding of it, but I'm not like an expert on this kind of stuff. Prediction number 3, incompetent individuals will be less able than their more competent peers to gain insight into their true level of performance by means of social comparison information. In particular, because of their difficulty recognizing competence in others, incompetent individuals will be unable to use information about the choices and performances of others to form more accurate impressions of their own ability. And then, lastly, the incompetent can gain insight about their shortcomings, but this comes paradoxically by making them more competent, thus providing them the metacognitive skills necessary to be able to realize that they have performed poorly. Okie dokie. First study. This is like a multi-part. A lot of papers in psychology have like study 1, study 2, study 3. So study 1, in the original Dunning-Kruger paper, here we go. We decided to explore people's perceptions of their competence in a domain that requires sophisticated knowledge and wisdom about the tastes and reactions of other people. That domain was humor. To anticipate what it is, to anticipate what is and what others will find funny, one must have subtle and tacit knowledge about other people's tastes. Thus, in study 1, we presented participants with a series of jokes and asked them to rate the humor of each one. We then compared their ratings with those provided by a panel of experts, namely professional comedians, who make their living by recognizing what is funny and reporting it to their audiences. Reporting it to their, oh my God, what a scientist. Recognizing what is funny and reporting it to your audience. Okay. By comparing each participant's ratings with those of our expert panel, we could roughly assess participants' ability to spot humor, and here are the results. We have on the bottom, the horizontal axis here, we're splitting results up into quartiles. So like bottom 25%, top 25%, middle 25%. And so what we have is that on the bottom we have like the scores that people actually got on these tests, and then up here on the top we have percentile, and the light line here is like where their test scores actually fell, and then the dark one is where they rated themselves. So so you see, so we got, like, and so this is what they were saying in the abstract. They're like people who scored in the 12th percentile rated themselves as being this in the around the 60th percentile, and so there's that one. They did logical reasoning. Same basic idea. We actually see, we go across, it's like kind of flat from bottom to second, dips down a bit to third, and then goes up a little bit for the top. It's just as far as people, again, they're asked, they take the logical reasoning test, and then they're asked, like, how do you think you did relative to everybody else? So the percentile thing, I want to be clear there, they're asking, how do you think you did compared to everybody else who did this? Grammar was the last one. So let's see, many people differ in the worth they assign to American Standard Written English, but they do agree that such a standard exists. And they differ in their ability to produce and recognize written documents that conform to that standard. Okay, so similar. So like these plots all look pretty similar. This is the main finding of the original Kruger and Dunning paper. And so this maps with what they were saying, like people who score the lowest dramatically overestimate how well they did. People who score the highest tend to underestimate how well they did, but not by as much. The people who score the lowest overestimate by much, much more. Okay, so let's do something fun now. Let's go to Google image search and just type in Dunning-Kruger effect. You can do this yourself. Here's a screenshot. Yeah, let's see if my mouse show up over here. Okay, this one down here, right there, you see that one? That's the one from the paper. Rest of these don't really look anything at all like what was in the original paper or any subsequent papers on the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like some of them are like we're going up, like you start off knowing zero and perceiving that you know zero, I guess, because we're on the bottom there, and then you go like whoo. As you like learn a teeny little bit, you like fly up to the tippity top in confidence, and then as you learn more, you go like woo, your confidence goes down like this, and then as you're learning more and more and more, and then as you learn a lot, your confidence goes back up, and that's all of these have that kind of thing going on in them. So some particular examples. So we've got competence. Yeah, the bottom got cut off here, but the label is competence at the bottom. So we've got non-average expert, confidence on the vertical axis. So I'm so great down to I know nothing, up to I'm pretty good, but I know my limitations, which is really close to I'm so great, which is, I don't know, as far as like if we're quantifying things on that y-axis. Let's see, the Dunning-Kruger thought process, same deal. I know everything. It's more complicated than I thought. I'll never understand. It's starting to make sense. Trust me, it's complicated. Okay. All right. This one like bounces up and down a little bit. So we've got conviction and then knowledge at the bottom. And we start off pretty damn sure you know a whole lot and feeling great about it. And this is called the child's hill. All right. And then questioning whether you know that much, acknowledging that you don't know much. Then you fall into the insecure canyon at the bottom, and you feel ashamed and embarrassed that you don't know much. And then you go up the grown-up mountain, which has some local maxima, and then falls down, and then kind of goes up and down. Realizing that knowing how little you know is the first step in becoming someone who actually knows stuff. Okay, I like this. It's a nice. This is from Wait But Why. I like that website. It's fun. The thing about, we're really like throwing children under the bus though here, right? They tend to ask a lot of questions and not assume that they know everything. I thought. But anyway. Okay, here we go. This one. So we've got ignorant up there at the top, and then we become cultured. As we become cultured, we lose knowledge, or as we gain knowledge, we lose confidence and become cultured. And then we have an explicit claim here. I like this one. We've got this gap. See that gap right there? Whoops. Let's go back. This gap right here is showing that an expert is rarely as confident as an ignorant person, because we peak at the top on the left, and we never get back. The maximum confidence when we're ignorant, and then we get a little bit back as we learn more, but we never get to the top. It's just as a reminder of. Let me just go back here again. Yeah, no. The people who scored the top actually did rate themselves more highly in their own knowledge than the people who scored at the bottom, just not by very much. So none of these do I have this thing going on. Let's see. Okay, we've got wisdom, confidence. We got the peak of Mount Stupid over there on the left, and then we've got the Valley of Despair. Which I don't know. Which do I like better? Do I like the Insecure Canyon or the Valley of Despair? And then we go up the slope of enlightenment to a plateau of sustainability. I don't know what the sustainability. I don't know what that means. Okay, let's see. Okay, we got Mount Stupid came up a few more times. The same label, it's just a different picture. Okay, then we got another. This one is the sharp one that goes like that. But we still have Mount Stupid, and we have a reference there. And here we have another one. This that goes up much more quickly on that side. The person on the left end point is a know nothing, right there. I want that to be intentional so bad. I really want that to be intentional. I don't think it is though. I went to the website and looked at stuff that was made. This kind of looks like, I'm guessing like MS Paint. What do you think? Could have been PowerPoint. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So this was like one of the first ones that started showing up. So we have all this stuff. They're all over the place. Most of them are just copies of each other. And I was just curious as to where all this started. So Dunning-Kruger, the paper came out in 1999. So there's a nice feature when you're doing your image searches. You can restrict it. You can time restrict it. So you see here my search bar. I've got Dunning-Kruger effect and then before : 2010. So that will only give me results from before 2010. I don't see any of those on here. I don't see any of these. When I do it today, that's all I see. This is it. Just all of them except that one correct one in the bottom bottom right. But back in 2010, we got like mostly legit pictures and then like cartoons of stuff that seemed like Dunning-Kruger-ish. Okay, so I moved it up a bit. I went to before 2015. Boom. There they are. Okay. Before 2013. Okay, I'm having a few more of the correct ones, but I still got a couple of these. Before 2011, they disappear, except for this. This is like, I don't. So what I actually know is going up over time. Cool. What I think I know is going up and then falling down. And then as they cross, I reach the humility threshold. It's not in the Dunning-Kruger paper. I swear, I've read it and it's not in there. Okay, here's the original. As far as I can tell, this is the original. This is from a cartoon that I love. It's called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. Yeah, it's great. And this is 2011. So this is everything wrong with political discourse in one graph. We've got confidence in one's own viewpoints and knowledge, and so you go up, you fall down, and this is a feature not on the other ones. That before your confidence can go back up with your knowledge, you die, apparently. So, it's pretty good. It doesn't say Dunning-Kruger anywhere on it. There's no label on this that says the Dunning-Kruger effect. I went back and looked through, like, there's some message boards comments from way back. I'm doing my time-restricted search, and you could see a couple of people posting things like, hey, doesn't this look like the Dunning-Kruger effect? And then somebody else is like, kind of, but not quite. And like, oh, okay. And then later on that year, so this was, March 9th. And then this was December 28th of the same year. There's where Mount Stupid came from. So we've got willingness to apply on a topic, knowledge of that topic. Then we've got some phrases from Mount Stupid. The bottom one's nice. Phrases that start with, now I don't know much about quantum physics, but. I like that. Again, this is not labeled Dunning-Kruger. Certainly it bears some similarities to the Dunning-Kruger effect, but it doesn't say Dunning-Kruger on it. And now the transformation. This is the one with NO nothing at the bottom. It lives. I had to find it on the Internet Archive in the Wayback Machine. This is the first one I could find that was actually labeled the Dunning-Kruger effect. October 15th, 2011. And I just note here, this looks like it was this straight line shooting up and then doing that. I'm guessing this was made from convenience given potential limitations of software. Such as I only have MS Paint. Yeah, but it's kind of, I think it's kind of interesting that that shape like persisted through so many different copies, and it seems like, I don't know why. I don't know where that came from. Okay, so anyway, that's, so the basic lesson here is, whatever the Dunning-Kruger effect is, it's not the graphs that you see. All these graphs that do this, there are no actual research studies showing that is what happens, as to like low knowledge and abilities, extreme confidence, gain a little bit of knowledge, your confidence plummets, gain some more, it goes back up. Like, that's just not, it sounds plausible, but it's not been found by anyone as far as I know. So there are a bunch of critiques out there. I didn't come up with all this on my own. Like, other people have pointed this out. So there's a couple of good ones. This one this one up here was posted on Skeptic, and it was this is a really good article. The Dunning-Kruger effect misunderstood, misrepresented, overused, and ... non-existent ? There's one down here that was called the Dunning-Kruger effect is probably not real. There's another really good one here, what the Dunning-Kruger effect is and isn't. This one on the bottom right, and when the video goes up, I'll put links to these. This was actually written before all those graphs exploded. So the Dunning-Kruger effect existed in the popular consciousness prior to all of these graphs that went like that in like 2011. Okay, so there are some people claiming not only are those graphs wrong, but they're also claiming that like this isn't even really a thing. So let's see what their objections are. So here are some specific objections. First of all, Kruger and Dunning reported what's called cross-sectional data. So data taken from a specific point in time. So we tested, or Dunning and Kruger tested a bunch of different people, and they plotted, their estimated performance relative to their actual performance, but they didn't follow them over time. They weren't like, let's see what happens to this person over the course of 10 years as they gain knowledge and wisdom. Like, that's not, I don't think anybody has, I don't want to say nobody's done it. Maybe somebody has, and I haven't seen it. But at any rate, so all these plots that are talking about like what happens to you over time, I mean, it would be nice. I'd like that to be true, that like we better calibrate our own impression of our own abilities and knowledge and all that as we grow older, but that's not what was in the paper. This is just a moment in time. So that's not really an objection to the paper itself, more to the interpretations that have been given to it. They report ability and perceived ability in terms of percentiles, meaning relative to the scores from others. And I think it's a pretty good case to be made that it's harder to guess your score on something relative to everybody else's than it is to just guess the raw score. And I don't know, it seems kind of unreasonable, actually, to ask somebody to report how they did compared to everybody else. I'm like, I don't know them. I didn't interview them. I didn't like listen to them talk for a little bit and get a general feel. Like, I don't know who'd you give it to. Like, I don't think people should be held to that standard. Like, be able to be aware of how well you're doing on something, like compared to a bunch of other people. And that's my opinion. To me, it would be a stronger criticism of people's perceived abilities if they were like just getting their raw score on the test wrong, as opposed to their score relative to everybody else. The other critique here is that Kruger and Dunning don't show any actual data on their plots. They just split them up into quartiles and then average the performance and then average the estimates of performance. And as a statistician, this kind of stuff drives me crazy. When you take you've got like a lot of data, you've got a lot of detail, a lot of information, and then you're like, now what I'm going to do with all of these data is I'm going to turn them into 4 data points. I have hundreds, but I want 4. Why? Come on, give me all of them. Like, why bin them and then give me averages and then report the averages? It just seems unnecessary. Anyway. But the big one, the big critique is that what we see in those original Dunning-Kruger graphs looks a lot like a thing that's called regression to the mean in statistics. So some of you have heard of this stuff. Some of you have taught this stuff. I notice a few faces in here. So regression to the mean. Regression to the mean is this phenomenon by which when you take multiple measurements on like, it doesn't, I say it on individuals. It doesn't have to be a person, but it's often people. Those who measure the lowest at first tend to improve on the next measurement, and those who measure the highest at first tend to get worse on the next measurement. We tend to regress towards the mean. This shows up in a lot of different areas. There's tons of examples. Here's the extreme. The absolute most extreme example of regression to the mean would be if I give everybody a 6-sided die. I'm like, everybody roll your die, and then I'm going to take those of you who get a 4, 5, or a 6. I'm going to put you in the good dice roller categories. You guys are good at this. The people who get a 1, 2, or 3, you're bad at it. You're going into the bad dice roller category. And then I'm going to have you all try again. Like, let's see. Okay, you 1, 2, and 3 people, try a little harder this time. And you roll it. And some of them will get 1, 2, and 3 again. And some of them, if you rolled a 1, you can either stay the same or you can get better. Better being a higher number. If you rolled a 2, there's like 4 ways of improving and only 1 way of getting worse. So if I take the average rolls of the bad rollers, it'll be higher than their original rolls. If I take the average rolls of the good rollers, it'll be lower, just because this is all just random noise. And if I select for the extreme values in some random process, then the next value I see is not very likely to be as extreme. So that's kind of the ridiculous edge case there. Really popular example, heights of children compared to their parents. So this is a plot from from Francis Galton, who was Charles Darwin's cousin and did a lot of stuff in like the late 1800s on statistics, and was also a eugenicist. So let's just say that. I don't want to, like, people are going to go, like, Ben was saying all these great things about Francis Galton. Let me Google him. Like, yeah. But he did. This is neat. So what Galton noticed is that the children of parents who were tall, who were like unusually tall, tended to also be tall, but not as tall as their parents. And the children of parents who were unusually short tended to also be short, but not as short as their parents. And so their heights were regressing to the mean. On this plot, there's this thing called mid-parent height. It's like a way of averaging the heights of mom and dad with a little bit of an adjustment for the fact that men are on average a little bit taller. And so we see up here that the deviates of the children are to those of their mid-parents as 2 to 3. I wish we still talked like that. Yeah.
Aren't all children deviant?
Aren't all children deviant? I mean, I don't want to throw them all under the bus there, but yeah, their heights at least are deviant. Yeah, what a great way of saying 2/3. I like that. We do it as like an analogy. Okay, when mid-parents are taller than mediocrity, children tend to be shorter than they. So mediocrity used to actually mean the middle. It didn't used to be like a pejorative to mean the middle. And then when mid-parents are shorter than mediocrity, their children tend to be taller than they. So then the question is like, well, how do we explain this phenomenon? And for years, Galton and some biologists, all this, were like going over like what explains this regression to the mean. Well, if we're thinking about like the heights of children, okay, well it's probably just like some like direct effect of like parents passing on their height to their children, plus some amount of random noise, and maybe the random noise is pulling them towards the average, kind of, and that's a pretty good story. Like that sounds really believable. The thing is, you could also flip these axes and show that the parents of exceptionally tall children tend to also be tall, but not as tall as their children. And the parents, yeah. So are the children like sending their height back in time to their parents? No, they're not. They're not, I don't think. So there must also be some other explanation. It can't just be like some direct causal effect plus noise. This is, on some level, this is what some people call a statistical artifact. This just happens when you have two variables that are not perfectly correlated to each other. You get this phenomenon, and I'll try to give some other explanations. So this is what I just said. Okay, these are real exam scores from an old semester in one of my classes. Exam 2 versus exam 3. And I got exam 2 on the x-axis and exam 3 on the y-axis. The dashed line here is the line of unity. So this is just y equals x, or exam 3 equals exam 2. So if a student got the exact same grade on the two exams, they would be on that dashed line right there. And so if you maybe try to focus your attention, here's where I wish my pen was working, but if you focus your attention towards the lower scores on exam 2, most exam 3 scores are above that dashed line. So most of the students who did poorly on exam 2 improved. And then up here at the top, you see, so some students who did really well on exam 2 improved yet again for exam 3, although there is like an upper limit. But you see more spread down below this line than above it at the top. So those students on average are doing a little bit worse. It turns out that this line of unity is not the correct line for showing the average value of the thing on the y-axis given some value of the thing on the x-axis. That's not, like if I told you to like draw a line that shows the trend through here, like you would be forgiven for drawing that line right there. It's like that makes sense as a line, but the problem is this line is not representing average for exam 3 given exam 2 because of what I just showed you. Like at the bottom, there's too many scores above the line and not enough below it. So that line can't be the average. The average is something else. it is the regression line. So some of you have seen this stuff before. If I open up some stat software and I say do a regression analysis, draw my best line through these data that show the trend, I get that green line right there. And if you sort of take a look down here at the bottom, this is making more sense. Like if I go anywhere on this line, I tend to have roughly the same like spread of exam 3 scores above it as below it. So that line is giving me the overall average exam 3 score given an exam 2 score, and you can see that down here it is above the line of unity. So the average scores for the low scoring students are high. The average exam 3 scores are higher than their exam 2 scores on average. And then when we get to the tippity top, we see the exam 3 scores are lower than the exam 2 scores on average. And so the critique is like, isn't that kind of like what we saw in those Dunning-Kruger pictures? This is less extreme, but yeah, the people on the bottom are like below the average, and the people on the top are above it. So that's the criticism. That's a criticism, is that maybe the Dunning-Kruger effect could be explainable by the same phenomenon. Okay, I'm going to take it one step further. I noted that Kruger and Dunning converted the actual scores into percentiles. Like, at least the score on the x-axis, they had percentiles. On the y-axis, there wasn't percentiles. It was just like, how well do you think you did? Well, it was in terms of percentile, but they didn't actually turn those into percentiles. What I said was weird. Let me go back. Let's see. So we have percentiles or quartiles on the bottom here. Here it says percentile, but this is like guess. This is when people guessed what percentile they were in. I didn't take their guesses and turn them into percentiles of guesses. That's not what they did. They're just guessing a percentile. So I tried to do a similar thing with my exam data. Here, so exam 2 as a percent, you can't see the thing on the bottom, but this the label is, this is exam 2 as a percentile relative to the whole class. That's my x-axis. And so I've sort of spread it out a little bit more evenly, because that's kind of what happens when you convert things into percentiles. And it made that, but I didn't do the same thing to exam 3. It made that line like shoot up like that. And now this is looking a little bit more like those Dunning-Kruger pictures that we saw. So that makes me wonder, like, well, what if they had taken people's guesses of their percentiles and turned those into percentiles themselves? Like, what is your percentile guess as a percentile of everybody's percentile guess? I know that's annoying, but but if they did that, maybe that would have spread out a little bit more and we wouldn't have seen such a strong effect. I don't know. That's at least an initial critique. And there's a pretty good response to it, though, which is that, like, if this were really like a regression to the mean thing, this line should maybe be a little lower down. Like, it should be, the people, like, what? In other words, why is it that the people on the bottom of these scores on these different kinds of tests are dramatically overestimating their abilities, as opposed to the people on the top, like, slightly underestimating theirs? And so one proposal has been that, well, okay, the phenomenon here is it's partly a regression to the mean-ish, and it's partly this, what they're calling a better than average effect, just like the general tendency for people to just overestimate how well they've done on things. I think that's a decent maybe explanation. There's also the regression to the mean thing I showed you before. That was like I talked about 2 dice rolls or 2 exams. These aren't really 2 measurements of the same thing. Like, one of them is how well you did on a test, and the other is guess how well you did relative to everybody else. So there is still a regression effect, but doesn't fit in as cleanly with the regression to the mean story, because it's not two observations of the exact same thing. Okay, so yeah, this critique says that, okay, maybe the Dunning-Kruger effect is some combination of regression to the mean plus this better than average effect, a tendency to just rate ourselves more highly in general. And so some examples, the one everybody always brings up is like, most people rate themselves as above average drivers, or people rate them as having above average sense of humor. I don't think this is so bad either. I want to give all the people who say they're above average drivers a little bit more credit. I'll give you my argument here. Do we have some universally agreed upon scale on which we quantify people's driving abilities? No. Yeah, somebody is, are you a good driver? Are they a good driver? Like, what am I using to quantify driving ability? Something I'm making up that's probably related to the stuff that I do when I drive, like the stuff that I think is important, right? Like if we took 10 minutes and had everybody make a list of the stuff you should have on your like quantifying driving ability index score, we'd come up with different things, you know? Like I don't know how many people here would have like, when you're at the front of the line in the left turning lane, when the arrow turns green, like getting out there as fast as you can. I take that really seriously. You're the captain of a team, all right? We're team left turning lane, and we're all trying to get through this intersection together. And you're the team leader, and you need to be staring at that light, right? That's what I think. But you know what? But like, I don't know how many other people would have that on there. And some people would be like, Ben, you take off too fast. Like, slow down. That's a sign of bad driving. I don't know. Like, how many people have, like, when you're parallel parking at you're like, the street, there's either a chunk of street and then there's like the red where you can't park, or it actually goes up to the end and you're the last one on there. Like, the back of your car should be as close to that red cutoff as possible, right? To maximize the amount of space for other people. Yeah, how many of you would have written that down though? Like, that's on my list. So like we all have our own ways of thinking about what good driving is. We probably follow our own rules, and so yeah, we're all above average drivers. There's nothing wrong with it, I don't think. Same with sense of humor. Like, how am I going to quantify? I mean, they had like professional comedians, right? But like, how am I going to quantify sense of humor? I don't know. People who laugh at the same stuff I laugh at. I don't know. Like, so I forgive people for these. It's a little different if you're talking about a task where there's like an objective rating. Like, how well did you do on this math test, for instance? You know.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that it seemed like study 2 with the logic had more of that dip, right, than the other 2 studies.
It's a great point. So the 2 of those studies were kind of subjective. We've got, well, grammar's not all that. Grammar is not so subjective, I don't think. Humor definitely is. Yeah, the logical reasoning one actually was the only one that showed like a little bit of a dip. Like, not that, but like it did a little bit of that. Absolutely, yeah, that's a good point. So this was a follow-up study where they said like, well, maybe we change like how hard the task is. And so this top line is the sort of Dunning-Kruger effect line. This is like a trivia thing, and for like when the trivia questions were easy, and the bottom one is like when the trivia questions were harder. And so this thing moves down. So people are not overestimating themselves by as much when they experience the sensation of like being asked questions that they don't know the answer to. So when it comes to the scientific debate about this, a lot of it comes down to like, what kinds of questions are you asking people? What kinds of tasks are you measuring? There's some tasks where you get immediate, like totally objective feedback. Like I don't think you can think you're a great free throw shooter when the ball never goes in. Like, I don't know if the Dunning-Kruger effect is like that strong. So it has to be a task where you don't get like direct immediate feedback. But it should be a task where there is some kind of objective standard. So, anyway. Okay, so there have been some other studies, stuff I think is interesting. There's that metacognitive explanation, and I admit I'm not like well qualified to assess this thing about like, is the explanation for Dunning-Kruger effect, does it have anything to do with your lack of ability or lack of knowledge impeding your ability to assess quality? the dual burden thing. I don't know, but there have been some studies that tried to narrow in on that, and then at least somebody claimed that that has an effect, but that it is neither necessary nor sufficient for creating the observed Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah.
This is where the cross-sectional versus longitudinal comes into play. If the person improved over time, their metacognitive ability to refer back and see how they've improved would increase as well. That makes perfect sense. Thank you. Yeah. So this metacognitive explanation really seems like it requires time moving on. Thank you. There was one where they said, okay, well, if this is just this better than average effect where people just love to think really highly about themselves, maybe we could incentivize that out of them by like offering them cash, like for getting their guess of their own score right. So there's some studies where like, if you get within 5% or 10%, whatever of your actual score on your guess, we'll give you some money. And at least one of them found that the Dunning-Kruger effect got worse. Like people so maybe we're really attached to this vision of ourselves. Some studies have just found that it didn't really do anything at all. And then there's some people who've done random data simulations, like, hey, I can come up with a model and like simulate random data and produce something that's similar to the Dunning-Kruger effect. And that goes back to the regression of the mean thing. Like if I generate data with some random component, I'm going to get some of that regression effect in it. Dunning himself actually addressed this critique regarding percentiles. So this was a 2003 paper where it's scoring like an exam. I think these are students in a class. And we've got objective performance at the bottom, and then estimated percentile on the vertical axis. And we see this. We see a stronger effect. So there's, we see a stronger effect when we have percentiles than when we have raw scores. So it looked like at least students in this study were better at guessing their raw score on the test than they were at guessing their score relative to everybody else's scores, which seems like it should make sense. So shift a little bit of gears. One of my complaints is the use of Dunning-Kruger as what I'll say is a rhetorical bludgeon. This I got thinking about this. There's a podcast I like called Rationally Speaking, the Julia Galef, and she just came out with a book called The Scout Mindset, and she was talking about her book, and when she was talking about her motivation for writing it, she had this quote that I just absolutely loved. She says, if you think about the people you've seen online and who know a lot of cognitive biases and logical fallacies, and you ask yourself, do these people tend to be really self-reflective? I don't think they usually do, for the most part. The people who I see talk a lot about people engaging in cognitive biases and fallacies prefer to point out those biases and fallacies in other people. That's how they wield that knowledge. So she was giving all these like workshops on critical thinking and teaching people about logical fallacies. And then what do people do with their newfound knowledge of logical fallacies is they get on the internet and they like point out other people's logical fallacies, right? Yeah.
That's so appreciated, because your previous slide kind of shows that where people guess their raw scores more accurately, right? But then they think, oh, but everybody else must suck, so they must have scored lower in their raw score, and that's where you get the deflection.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a good
exactly what
good point. So if you're doing better at guessing your raw score than your percentile, then you're effectively assuming that more people did worse.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't have time to think about it really fast, but that sounds fair. Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I kind of not worry, but it gets a little annoying when people just like Dunning-Kruger. Is that what it's for? There's an interview with Dunning where he talks about like his motivation, what he's hoping people would get out of this thing. He was hoping that it would lead to like introspection and saying like, hey, I know, isn't it cute? Like, yeah, that people would say, oh yeah, there is this tendency for us to overestimate our own abilities, especially when we don't know as much, and so like I should be careful. I should be wary of falling into the trap of overconfidence. That is what David Dunning at least says he wanted.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lovely thought, isn't it? But you read about this, you're like, oh God, I see that in other people all the time. So the logical fallacy, I don't know if you remember these, like, your logical fallacy is, you're on the internet, you're on some like annoying place that you shouldn't be, wasting your time arguing with strangers. What's wrong with you? Oh my God. And you see like somebody's posting, here's your logical fallacy, mwahaha. Then you have the cute ones with like the referees, like, yeah. So like, is this how we're using it? So we got some Dunning-Kruger memes there as well. I mean, it is. I mean, comment sections are pretty bad. Like, I mean, yeah, I see it. I see it. Like, I see people who don't know much, like, talking to a lot all the time. Let's see. Wait. Oh no. Did I put my slides in the wrong order? I did. I'm just gonna do the order where I wanted this one to be earlier. So, when I'm thinking about this, like, do I think that the Dunning-Kruger effect is real? Oh, maybe this is the... Oh, no, that's it. I put the I don't know before the question. This is the slide I'm supposed to be on. So is the Dunning-Kruger effect real? I mean, it seems like it would have to be true on some level. Like this explanation of, if you are low in ability or low in knowledge, then you lack what is required to make accurate assessments about ability and knowledge either in yourself or in other people. I mean, that just seems that like it's got to be true, right? That's how it seems to me. Now, is that in and of itself going to tend to push people's estimates too high? I guess I don't know. It's not quite clear to me why. Like, I get the metacognitive thing. I don't quite get why that should necessarily be like shooting these up really high. Thank you so much. So I could say here, like, as a statistics teacher, like, underconfidence is real. Like, I see it all the time. Like, I see students who are just like so down on themselves and like, I'm not going to figure this out. I'm not going to pass this class. This is just absolutely overwhelming. I'm like, you're actually doing pretty well relative to a lot of your to your classmates. I guess that would be like the top end of the Dunning-Kruger curve, right? But I'm talking about like people maybe in the middle of it as well. Like, I don't know why we'd necessarily have to have the overconfidence. And then this point here, the regression to the mean thing, is that really a solid argument against causality? I'm not so convinced. Like, the fact that somebody can make up a fake data simulation that involves pure randomness and create something that looks similar to Dunning-Kruger doesn't imply that Dunning-Kruger came from a fake data simulation. I mean, we make fake data simulations in my field all the time. That doesn't mean that you are allowed no more complex an explanation than the simplicity of the model you use to make the fake data simulation. Like linear regression, we draw a line through some data. The linear regression model is y is a linear function of x plus random noise. So does that mean that anytime I have a model that fits well for real data, I should conclude, therefore, that the actual mechanism that generated those data was just like a straight line and people pulling random numbers from some distribution? Like, it's a model, it's a simplification. So I'm not totally sold on this idea that because Dunning-Kruger looks like a statistical artifact, that it must necessarily be a statistical artifact. And Dunning makes this argument as well, says like, well, okay, you can explain this by this like lack of correlation between our abilities and our perceived abilities. What then explains that? And I don't have that answer, because that's not my field. I will say here, beware the confirmation bias. So when you hear the Dunning-Kruger story, it sounds so plausible because like instances of it immediately fly into your head, right? When we talk about like people who don't know very much being really, really, really overconfident, there's probably a certain name floating to a lot of your heads right now that I won't say out loud. Yeah, this comes to the forefront of our mind, but remember, like, those are salient. Those are salient situations. You can remember them. Do we sit around tallying all the non-Dunning-Kruger cases? Like, every time I interact with somebody, do I be like, wow, you don't seem very Dunning-Kruger. Let me add you to the denominator, right? So I can find this fraction. We don't notice this. So just because you can think of instances of stuff that looks Dunning-Kruger-ish, doesn't mean that this is necessarily like a general phenomenon that like affects large numbers of people. I would say, yeah, ordinary self-awareness is kind of mundane. Lack of self-awareness makes other people be like, ooh, you're not self-aware. Okay, let's see. I am getting down. Okay, let's see if this works. I don't know if this is gonna work, honestly. I tested it. Oh no, let's just make you be there. And what I'm gonna do is, while I'm talking to you, I am going to download your responses. I should ask you. Maybe I should have asked you how well you thought you did after the. Now that you know the trick, I mean, hopefully it all looked like a trap to begin with. Let's see. I'm going to extract the data file. I tried to make this be as potentially quick and maybe automated as I possibly could, but I'll try. Let's see if I can show it to you. Where I need downtime. Here we go. Oh, can't open two files with the same name at the same time. Ben, that was a huge mistake. Okay, let's see if I can show you what your data file looks like. I'll drag it over to the other side of the screen. Don't save. Open. All right. Here we go. So this looks really, really terrible. As for raw data, always looks terrible. But I'm going to play a little potential trick. I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to stick it into a different data file. Okay, where I relabeled. I couldn't get Google to automatically relabel my columns. Let's do that. Okay, let's save it. Oh my God, is this actually going to happen? We're getting close. I'm going to go into my markdown file. I'm just going to hit go and see if it works. Those of you who've done this before, yeah, I know what this feels like. Here it goes. Come on. Let's see. Okay, it knitted. I think my recording is not. I'm gonna change the window that my recording is on really quick. This is so slow and annoying. No, I'm not. I'm just gonna superimpose it later in post. All of this will be cut out. When you watch this on YouTube, you're gonna be like, I remember him leaning over against his computer for an uncomfortably long amount of time, and I don't see that on the YouTube video. What exactly is going on? Come on. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. I should have jittered it. I didn't jitter it. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we got number correct. And so of those who... Hell, no, we got more than 2 correct?
No.
Oh, y'all! No, this is... I mean, just guess randomly. There's enough of you in this room right now. Is there something wrong with my... Is there something wrong with my code? I don't believe this. I think I got n row of the yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I don't have time to try to diagnose that. Okay. Well, so So this is. Did that actually all average out to 0? I suspect that there's a problem, but I tested it before on me clicking on things randomly and it worked, but this is, I mean, I guess that's possible. It's probably not likely. Let's pretend it was. then you're estimating, then here, if that were true, then the people who got 1 correct would be overestimating, and the people who got 5 would be underestimating. So there were 4 questions. This is messed up. Okay. Well, I want to say for myself, I clearly do not suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's a complete disaster, and probably a good place to just stop. I thought it would be really cute if I could show something that looked like the Dunning-Kruger effect and like your self-assessments of, you know, the Dunning-Kruger effect, what you know about it, and that was all going to be really adorable. And it became even more adorable for a totally different reason that I wasn't anticipating. So I'm just going to stop there and just see if you got questions or comments for me. Thanks for listening. Anybody? I think we have, they told us we have to get out at 8 o'clock, so I can hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, and we have like 25 minutes for questions. We can go out to the lobby if you guys have more questions. So.
I will totally hang out and talk for forever. It's my job. Yes, right there.
Is the curve that we see here a measure of like second or third derivative, where it's like the acceleration effectively of the differentiation between expectations?
So I was thinking the same thing. Like, can I come up with a good reason why you would read what the Dunning-Kruger effect is and come up with that curve? Because like if you read what it is, it's all of this like people with lower ability overestimate, people with higher ability underestimate. So it's not the first derivative, because the first derivative is just gonna go down like that. Is it the second derivative? I don't know.
Action doesn't really apply. I think it's like comparison between the two, right? When it's like there's a huge gap. And there's a gap.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely there's a huge gap. So okay, if I take that gap and I take the absolute value, then yes. So if I retain the sign, then it's just going to go down. But if I do the absolute value of the gap, so everybody who's like, what the hell are you talking about? Let's go find it. Yeah, so like I have the size of the gap there is big, and then the size of the gap gets small, and then the size of the gap gets big again. So if I just do absolute value of the size of the gap, I think you're right. I can get something like that. So
that's a lot for a breakfast cartoon serial.
Sorry?
I said that's a lot for a Saturday morning funny.
Yeah, it's a lot for a Saturday morning funny, and it's. I mean, I wonder. Like, I almost want to say let's do a study where we describe something that's not the Dunning-Kruger effect but behaves that way. Describe it with words and see if people come up with that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that change in the size of the gap, maybe plotting that like has a certain intuitive appeal to it. It's a decent thought. Yeah. More questions up here? Or?
Yeah, I was thinking about your test question. When you have the high scorers and how they do a little bit, just slightly less, but the low scoring initially they often go up a little bit more.
Yes.
Those seem like boundary effects to me.
Oh, certainly.
Make it higher than 100%.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Yes. So the comment here, which you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The comment here is there's clearly a boundary effect. So for those of you who haven't heard of this, the boundary effect is you got a scale, it's got a limit. So everybody who scored 100, their like understanding of the material is not all equal. If I had some other instrument for quantifying whatever I'm trying to quantify that didn't have that bound on it, I would probably see data going up there more. I think that's got to be the case, as opposed to the bottom. So perhaps if I gave a really, really, really hard test and I made my boundary go on the bottom, I would see something that looks a little bit different. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is the extent to which that line is going to sort of flatten out is going to be in line with like the the strength of the correlation. So if the correlation is weaker, if I got more sort of like random noise or stuff that looks like random noise, then that line would flatten out a little bit more. So yeah, that's why the extreme case of regression to the mean is always pure randomness. The less of a random component there is, then the weaker the regression effect that you see. Other questions? Yeah.
Who are the everybody we're talking about here that's taking these tests nationally, culturally, socially, business?
Like in the studies?
Yeah, who are the studies?
Oh, probably students in a 100 level psychology class, I guess. As far as like when you read these papers, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but a lot of times when you read these papers, the participants were students in a class. This one, it was students in a class. I would have to pull the paper up. I can't remember exactly what university it was at, but the original study was students in a class.
Generally, U.S. citizens.
U.S. citizens. So we're talking about people who are in college. It's a pretty good school. I can't remember what school Dunning was or is at, but it's a pretty top tier school. So yeah. So this is obviously, I assume you're getting at this problem of who you're trying to draw inference to. Am I claiming that I've discovered a universal general phenomenon based on giving a test to a bunch of college students at an elite university? There's a lot of assumptions packed into that. Is that where you're getting at?
Well, yeah, I'd just say that other cultures or nations have a little more humility about their knowledge. Yes,
that's actually a great point. And I on the Wikipedia page for Dunning-Kruger, they mentioned that. They say, I think it was a study, they tried to do the same thing in Japan, and they saw a lot more underconfidence than overconfidence. At least that's according to the brief Wikipedia blurb I read when I did my research.
Related to that, so maybe ethnicity or culture could affect it. How about, has anyone looked at the effects of gender or race in the Dunning-Kruger effect?
The question is, has anybody looked at the effect of gender or race? I honestly don't know. It seems like somebody would have had to. I read the original paper. I read a couple of specific critique papers and a couple of follow-ups from Dunning. I don't recall seeing that, but yeah, if we went over to Google Scholar or whatever, we'd probably be able to find it. Yeah. More questions? Yes.
Question from the Zoom.
Oh yeah, thank you.
It's about Dunning-Kruger. How can you apply that to things when people underestimate themselves, like weight?
When they underestimate, like how much they think they weigh?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of an overestimate, right? I guess like you're overestimating how little you think you might. I mean, if we're talking about like our desires, right, before we step on the scale, I don't know, honestly. Like, is that like, am I gonna put that down to like a metacognitive deficiency, where people who know more who are more self-aware of what they should weigh are gonna do better, and people who are just sort of ignoring it and hoping for the best aren't? I don't know. It's a cool thought, but. Are there any more in the Zoom room?
That's it right now.
Okay. Anything else?
So, this is also a question of like, do you know all the literature? Which, no. Do you know if they've done any control for the perceived difficulty of the questions, the tasks?
So,
like, give the participants really easy questions that seem hard, or give them really hard questions that seem easy.
Perceived. Okay, so not actual, because I know that there's the ones on actual difficulty, but perceived difficulty. There are these classic sets of like mathy questions where the immediate intuitive answer you want to give is wrong. Where it's like, what is it, like a ball and a bat cost $1.10, and the bat cost $1 more than the ball, and so what did the bat or the ball cost? And you want to say like the ball cost 10 cents, but it cost 5 because math, and you write it down, you do the math, like, oh wow, I got it wrong. There's a classic set of those kinds of questions where like the one you want to go to really fast is wrong, and then when you sit and think about it, you got a better chance of getting it right. I don't know. I don't know if that ought to fall under Dunning-Kruger or not, because it seems like if we're going to do the real Dunning-Kruger, we need to link this back to the metacognitive deficiency. Yeah, I would think. I mean, I would think that the people who know the trick would rate themselves pretty highly, because you're like, oh yeah, no, I know that trick. How did I do? I got it right because I know the trick. That's what I would do. I don't know about anybody else. Other.
So one of your slides
Yeah.
mentioned the Nobel Prize. Was this a Nobel Prize study? Or
That's a
is that just
fantastic
some
question.
Google
That was
thing or
like
something?
2000 psychology Nobel.
So what?
On the slide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the slide right there. Yeah.
Yeah, there were. These were. Yeah, those first ones that came out.
Nobel Prize psychology.
2000. So no,
it did win the Nobel Prize.
must have been for something. Did that win the Nobel? I guess I don't know how the Nobel Prize in psychology works. Is that realistic to get it like 11 years later? I don't know.
Well, actually, that would be 1 year later. You said it was.
1999. I saw 2010. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess if I'm willing to take the leap of believing what's on that slide.
That's my question.
Yeah. So I didn't look it up.
Also, there's no Nobel Prize in psychology.
Oh, there's no Nobel Prize in psychology. It must have been in math, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we answered that.
It's not real.
Okay. Fake. All right. Cool. So MS Paint and fake Nobel Prize. Got it. Yes.
You were going to reconduct the study. What would you do differently?
Were I to reconduct? Ooh, what a fantastic question. Were I to reconduct the study, what would I do differently? Certainly, I think doing it on raw scores is more fair than doing it on percentiles. I'll admit that I just don't understand enough about the literature to know how to directly assess whether this is due to a metacognitive deficiency. If I wanted to get the regression, so the regression explanation depends upon just the lack of correlation between the things that you're measuring. So the plausibility of the regression explanation lies in the claim that there is not that strong of a correlation between people's actual scores and what they think their scores were. But that's not a causal story at all. Like, I don't have the explanation for why people wouldn't be very good at accurately perceiving what they scored. This is one of the responses that Dunning gives when people say, oh, it's all regression to the mean. It's like, okay, cool, regression to the mean is a statistical phenomena. I believe you, that's a thing, but you've not given me an explanation as to why you have that lack of correlation. How would I narrow in on that? Man, I don't know off the top of my head. That's a good question, though. Yeah.
I think it might be interesting to try to do it in different orders. Like, ask people how good they think they're going to do before they actually do the task, and then vice versa.
That's a great idea.
And then maybe it'll be different in those cases.
So yeah, take the perceived ability first, then take the test, and presumably, if you have good self-awareness, you'll know that you didn't do all that well on the test. And yeah, presumably, yeah. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
Can you give us a question off of that test?
A question off of the test. So the humor one was oh yeah, I meant to say this in the main talk. They took like jokes from like a Milton Berle book or something like that. Pretty sure. Let's see. I've got the paper. Yeah, I'll just bring up the paper and we'll see the full description. Yeah. So they had students read, like, look at jokes and then say, like, how funny is this joke? And then they gave them to professional comedians and they were like, how funny are those jokes? And I mean, I don't want to, like, that's probably the least impressive of the study designs. I'm trying to find my mouse. This is so terrible. It's going the wrong way. Okay. Oh yeah, no, you see, I'm not, you can see that. Okay. So humor. Cornell. There you go. There's your answer. Cornell. So we've got Woody Allen, Al Franken, a book of really silly pet jokes. So it wasn't Milton Berle. I'm sorry. I apologized to Kruger and Dunning there. And so we have them rate the jokes, and then we have comedians who responded to their request to come participate in a scientific study on humor. So there was moderate reliability amongst. So reliability is like how much do the different comedians' ratings agree with one another, except there was one comedian's ratings were negatively correlated with everybody else's. like we've got this overall correlation that alpha equals 0.2 is called Cronbach's alpha.
I did that on purpose. He thought it was funny.
I bet the comedian was like, he just likes old-fashioned cheesy jokes. I don't know, or she. I have no idea. Yeah. So that one was yeah. There's that, and then the other studies, the logical reasoning one is a little bit more straightforward. Oh yeah. Sorry. I'm getting so confused about the location of my mouse right now. No. Do you want to talk about leverage and influence? Okay. No. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll just leave that there. Are there any other? We could go through the other one. The other ones are more boring. It's like, how'd you do on the grammar test? And how do you do on the logical reasoning test? All right.
Do you have psychology friends, and what do they? I know you have psychology friends.
You know that I have psychology friends.
What do they think of that?
I'm a statistics guy with some psychology friends. I haven't actually I'll find out after today. I haven't really broached the details. I always want to talk about the statistics stuff. So I talked to some psychology friends about the regression to the mean thing. I talked to my philosophy friend about the what is it? Are we permitted a causal explanation for something that appears like a statistical artifact? And that's like a really interesting philosophical question. I haven't actually talked to my philosophy friends about the core of the metacognitive deficiency hypothesis. Yeah.
I can give my 2 cents as someone who studied psychology in college.
Okay.
I think it's just fascinating that what started as a cognitive psychology experiment to figure out, thinking about metacognition, how we perceive ourselves, really turned into a social psychology commentary on how everyone got one graph and ran with it, and then started kind of tailoring that back, and now we have this whole new Dunning-Kruger effect that has nothing to do with this actual paper. It just has to do with what people see as the Dunning-Kruger effect and this one graph that they can relate to. And so I think it's just an interesting unintended experiment.
I think it's fascinating. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. I think it's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, there's there's the irony, right? Just people throw in Dunning-Kruger and other people are using this graph that just was invented out of nowhere, and nobody bothered. It's not that nobody bothered to go look it up, because some people did. I showed you pictures. There's some great posts out there, like blog posts and stuff, where other people pointed this out, these graphs are all just completely made up. But man, it seemed like if I'm going to take the time to take some graph that I found on the internet and make my own version of it with new labels and all of that, I would also take the time to look up the Dunning-Kruger paper that I'm citing on the graph. That. So I totally agree. This turns into this whole different phenomenon of how does this completely fictitious made up thing just multiply and get recreated to the point where when you do a Google image search, I mean, I just showed you what I got on my screen when I started. You can scroll. There are so many different copies of this thing. So many people have taken the same graph and made their own version of it. And in blog posts, and not all blog posts too. There's been stuff in more legit media that show those graphs and state very authoritatively, and like just how many people are writing blogs or writing articles on the internet and not even bothering to go take a look at the source material. Apparently quite a few, and so there's our Dunning-Kruger irony, right? Yeah, it's metacognitive, I suppose. It's meta Dunning-Kruger. Yeah.
I just did a little Google search on the Nobel Prize for psychology in 2000, and it didn't win an actual Nobel Prize because obviously that doesn't exist for psychology, but it won this one called an IG Nobel Prize, which is like an
Ig Nobel Prize. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
That's all. Yeah. Okay. So the people who
ironic all around.
give the joke, the people who come up with the joke Nobel Prizes gave it to Dunning-Kruger, and then that got turned into Nobel Prize on the just so layers upon layers. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? I'm having fun. We have 5 minutes till they're like officially kicking us out of here. All right. Well, I'm gonna hang out in the lobby and like thank you all so much for coming out here.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, y'all.
Second round for a movie?
Thank you.